Hooray, hooray, hooray. I'm glad to see all of you. Today is a great day. I'm in an awesome mood, and I feel like sharing. I hope you feel the same. Well, at least you will after this stream. Even if you're not feeling great right now, you'll feel even better, or your mood will lift in a good way. So let's make good use of our time together today, okay? Today we have a very important topic, the digestive tract, the gut. Today we're going to talk about what's really at the root of it all, why we try, how exactly the gut affects our whole body and our entire system. But while everyone is slowly joining in, let me tell you what events we have planned for this month, so you can mark them on your calendar and make sure not to miss any of them. Because Vadym is preparing something useful for you. All you have to do is take advantage of it, right? So, today our live stream is about the gastrointestinal tract. On the 10th, we'll have a live session. Why can't you relax? Why is it impossible both psychologically and physically? What's getting in the way inside? We'll break everything down, do a diagnosis, practice, and work through it together. On the 15th, we'll dive into the musculoskeletal system together. It's a deep and important topic. Yeah, when your neck, head, shoulders, joints, lower back hurt, when your spine just gives out. What's going on there? What does it mean from a psychosomatic perspective? We'll go through all of that with you in detail as well. On the 17th, this is really important, so mark your calendars. We'll have a webinar called What Triggers Your Illnesses? There you'll get structured, detailed information about triggers, about illnesses, and everyone who attends the webinar will receive this chart so you can print it out, stick it on your fridge, and, as they say, stay in sync. I'll tell you more about this later today. And on the 21st, our test drive begins. It's a week before the basics, before the basics of psychosomatics module, right? This is a week-long program with lectures, practices, and meditations. I'll talk about that today as well. Is that clear? All right. Great. Before we dive into the topic of the gastrointestinal tract, let's honestly sync up with each other. Not so that I'm just making things up and telling you something. Who here has ever experienced this? You got nervous. Something happened. Maybe you got scared. There was a stressful moment. Some misunderstanding. Something terrible happened. And you felt an actual spasm in your gut? Not a psychological one, but a physical one. Well, maybe a psychological one too. But literally a physical one. Like something squeezed inside. Like a stone or a spasm. Who's ever had that? Type me in the chat. Don't stay silent, please. Right. Have you ever? Yes, I have. Has anyone ever experienced that in their life? It happened to me before an important exam. Of course. Before an important exam, before an event, before a date. Or you're worried that something might go wrong. Maybe you have a presentation coming up. Or you just got some news on your phone. You look at it, nothing special. You're just sitting at home, nothing's happening, but you read that information. And that's it, you're affected. Who here has ever, after a stressful situation, wanted to eat something to cope, or on the contrary, lost their appetite? But those are more like habits, really. Of course. No one else has experienced that, yeah? So, for those who are saying never happened, I immediately want to ask, how in touch are you with your sensitivity? How well do you actually feel your own body? Yeah, I've had issues since childhood and still do. Yeah. Eating to cope, yeah. Of course, we all know and feel this mechanism, that our reaction, as people even say, right, that fear lives in the gut, that you can't accept or digest something, you know, as people say in everyday language. And we intuitively understand this, we intuitively feel it. But when suddenly a psycho-emotional problem arises in our life, or let's say, a problem with the gastrointestinal tract, like inflammation, ulcers, maybe some kind of growth or something else, we never look towards emotions, feelings, or psychosomatics. We start treating it with herbs, pills, antibiotics, probiotics, and so on, with diet, maybe, or physical activity. But we rarely ever look, like when you go to a gastroenterologist, they never talk to you about your emotions and feelings, about what's going on with you. But that's actually where the conversation should begin. And today's topic is actually going to be connected to this. I want to start with a story. It's about a girl, someone who helped me believe in psychosomatics even more, helped me understand just how much it really works. This was at the beginning of my practice. She was my client, a young girl, who came to me and said, Vadym, I have an esophagus surgery scheduled in a month. You work with psychosomatics, so I'm leaving soon, and I can only come to you once. Here I am. Let's try to do something. Let's try to work on this together. If it works, great. I really don't want to have the surgery. I'm a young woman, and honestly, I don't want anyone poking around in there or cutting something out, you know? That just doesn't work for me. If it works out, okay. If it doesn't, I have no complaints against you. I said, that's totally fine. Come over. Let's figure it out together. She comes to see me, and the first thing we address, honestly, her body was practically screaming it. We didn't even have to dig very deep. It was all about her relationship with her mom. She lives with her mother. It's the issue of not accepting her mom. Maybe her mom doesn't suppress her anymore, but back in her childhood, she definitely did. It's her own story. She starts crying. All those old resentments come up. Unlived, undigested, rejection, aversion. And basically, for 40 minutes, she just talks, cries, lets out all those feelings that have been bottled up inside. It's not like any of this was new. No, some things were new for her, and some things were, let's say, good old stuff. Right. One session lasted 40 minutes. A month later, she sends me an incredible, well, I almost said postcard. Not a postcard, a message, which actually influenced my work, my life. Because at that time, I still didn't know whether I should go into psychosomatics, or psychology, or maybe focus more on bodywork. So, let's say, I was at a crossroads, trying to choose my path, and she wrote directly, Vadym, this is just unbelievably cool. I went in for surgery, and the polyp was gone. That's it, the doctor said, go home. As they say, take it easy. There's nothing to operate on, she said. I'm so happy, I'm grateful to you. Of course, I wrote back to her, thank you for trusting me. And that's when I realized, I have no right to stay silent. I have no right to hide this. This is important, this is needed. This is what I want to do, to go deeper into in practice. When you can just work with emotions, with feelings, with a person, and their surgery gets cancelled, not because they're scared with some therapy, not because they're threatened with consequences or anything else, but simply cancelled. Right. That's why most of our illnesses can absolutely be prevented by us. Let's give a round of applause for Vadym's great story. And what's the point? What do I want us to sync up on right now? That you're not to blame? Most of the problems you have now in your body, on a psycho-emotional level, or just some kind of misunderstanding, these exist. There are fears that something might go wrong, and it feels like you're doing something, you're trying. I often get messages like, Vadym, I've tried this therapy and that protocol. I've already tried so many treatment methods, but nothing helps me. By the way, who here has experienced that? Give me a wave. And inside, you start to feel desperate, your hands drop. You start getting angry at yourself. Who else has felt that way? Stop doing that. It's not your fault. You just didn't know that our body, our feelings, and our life are all one whole. And to truly heal a person, it's not enough to just prescribe them some pill. It's not enough to just assign them some procedures. You also need to sort out their feelings and emotions. In other words, there's no skill, no understanding. It's just that no one ever told you about this before. But Vadym is going to explain it now. But before we dig deeper, let's talk a little bit about some statistics. So, what exactly is our gut? We often underestimate it. So what's actually going on in there? First of all, our gut is basically our second brain. Why is that? Because there are about 100 million neurons there, and it can actually function independently from our brain. 95% of serotonin, the happiness hormone, which is also called the antidepressant hormone, is produced in the gut. Dumb. What does that mean? I might get hit with depression. I have no mood, I feel bad. And it's not because life is joyless, but because something's wrong with that long fellow I have between my heart and my beautiful legs, yeah? There are spasms, there are pains, there are inflammatory processes of a psycho-emotional nature going on there, right? And in reality, the body can't function as a single whole. The body as a whole, in general. That's a very important point. Why is it that now there are so many books, so much research about how a poorly functioning gut, when there are all these inflammatory processes going on, leads to apathy, lack of energy, and strength in a person? Right, like drowsiness.
Next point.
Have you ever had it where you write something down and then can't read it? That's exactly what I just did. I wrote something down and thought, I'd like to break the hands of whoever wrote this. But then I thought, oh well, I'll just skip it.
Next.
Of course, there's our familiar, beloved microbiome. A lot of vitamins are produced, and a lot of beneficial microorganisms are generated in our gut, which affect our immune system. Right. So what do we need to do? We need a varied diet. We need things like probiotics, prebiotics, and so on. If we look at Ayurvedic medicine, for example, I was in India 6 months ago, and they actually gave us a lecture about this. They talked about probiotics, postbiotics, all sorts of biotics. There, you need to combine different herbs. All of this is correct. All of this is important. But if you're constantly under chronic stress and don't know how to manage your emotions and feelings, unfortunately, it's like putting a plaster on a corpse. Some of it might work, but most of it will just go right through you, because when your body is stressed, stress hormones are produced, and everything just passes by. Who here can relate to that? Who has been on a super healthy diet, but it didn't help at all? Right. And here's this very important mechanism again, the one I mentioned. Look. Anxiety. You fall into fear. Your gut reacts immediately with a spasm, right? That's what we started with. But at the same time, inflammatory processes in the gut immediately affect the brain, right? Because through the vagus nerve, there's a direct connection. And what happens to the person? They fall into anxiety. They get insomnia. They feel restless. Their life becomes uncomfortable. That's why our gut is extremely important. Next point, okay?
The gut.
Gut spasms directly affect our lower back. Come on, you didn't know that, did you? Hardly anyone talks about this. Only bodywork specialists know about it. And even then, unfortunately, not all of them, right? Let's say visceral therapists, those who know how to work with internal organs. And in osteopathy, there's even a separate field called visceral osteopathy. I actually studied it. Yes, I worked and practiced in this area. I know that, for example, a spasm of the ileocecal valve or the sigmoid colon directly affects the lower back. A person comes in and says, my lower back is shooting with pain. It hurts, especially right where those bones are, you know, the joints. But then you relax their intestines, and the lower back pain goes away. Well, of course, as you can imagine, a spasm in the intestines doesn't just happen for no reason. So if your lower back suddenly hurts, try palpating your intestines, so to speak. If you find that it's really tense, maybe you should start working on that first, because this tension in your lower back could actually be compensatory. That's exactly why the students who come to study with me, yes, in my programs, in addition to psychosomatics, I also teach them how to do abdominal massage to help relax all these organs. Yes. Sound familiar? Drop some smileys, drop some pluses in the chat. Let's keep going. The intestines are important. The intestines are necessary. It's not just about things like bloating, constipation, allergic reactions, inflammation, diarrhea, and so on, the stuff everyone experiences. It also affects the immune system, your psycho-emotional state, and the whole body overall. I think there's even a book called The Gut is the Head of Everything. Right. But the first thing we're definitely going to talk about is stress and psychosomatics. Because if you're constantly stressed, anxious, and worried, you'll end up eating all sorts of junk. You definitely won't be in the mood for salads or trying to be fancy, right? And of course, that spasm will constantly be present in your gut. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine, I went to visit her, and she said, listen, I can't take it anymore. I've been taking pancreatin for a whole week, I think, or something like that, because my pancreas is inflamed. She says, I don't know what's happening to me. I just feel awful. She looks so pale, really pale. like something out of a horror movie. Everything was bad. I said, listen, let me take a look at your gut. I go and check her gut, and it's like a rock, literally a rock, especially right in the area of the duodenum. Because this is where the pancreatic ducts come out, right, physiologically speaking. That's why it's always really important to relax this area. I said, look, you've got a stone there. I start massaging it gently. I ask, so what's going on in your life right now? Come on, tell me a little bit about it. She starts telling me about a situation with her relatives. Her relatives, well, they haven't even arrived yet. But over the phone, they've already driven her crazy, telling her she has to do this, solve that, and take care of something else. On one hand, she's really happy to see them, but on the other hand, that sense of obligation has just collapsed, and there's this context that it's dirty, it's unpleasant. And honestly, I don't want to deal with any of this at all. But the relatives are going to come anyway. So I've already accepted it, right? It's not like I'm refusing to accept it. They're coming. They've already got their tickets. I have to deal with their problems, sort things out. But I just can't process it. I can't get anything useful out of it for myself. I don't see any downsides to this, which is why the small intestine gets involved. And as she starts talking it all out, letting her feelings out, literally, right under my hands, the smooth muscles relax. She jumps up and runs to the bathroom. Boom, boom, boom. Takes care of her business, comes out with rosy cheeks, and says, wow, that was awesome for me. I feel so light in my body, she says. I feel like I've started living again. And here I am, sitting on pills for a week, not understanding what's going on. Of course, she goes in, and they tell her, well, you have pancreatitis, inflammation, and so on, some kind of reasons. But the intestine works as a single whole. Of course, it's all one tube. Just imagine, it goes from the oral cavity up to the nose. Yes, there are different plexuses, different twists and turns. Everything affects each other, and first and foremost, our emotions. So let's dig a little deeper now and see what our gastrointestinal tract is from a psychosomatic perspective. It's about digesting life, digesting events, digesting circumstances, acceptance, assimilation, and the ability to let go. All of this is what we mean when we talk about digestion. I accept, yes, I let it pass through me, and I let it go. That's exactly why nowadays, according to WHO statistics, 70% of people have problems with their gastrointestinal tract. Well, because that's classic. Something happens in life that you can't accept, digest, or let go of, right? Now we're going to dive deeper into these topics, and you just endure it. You go around in circles, it seems to you, but you can't do anything about it. Either you can't handle it, or you can't change it, or basically you just don't want to deal with it. But the body doesn't lie. It's stuck in this deep spasm, in your gut. All of it just keeps spinning in circles. So, digesting life is about people, it's about events, it's about circumstances, right? It's about emotions, about decisions. Go ahead and write to me right away if you want your example discussed, and I'll analyze it for you immediately. Or do you want us to just go on in general? So, can we say that, from a psychosomatic perspective, the gastrointestinal tract is about accepting reality? Yulia, that's a very broad concept. Basically, accepting reality is how we could explain any problem, any stress, any psychological state, any psychosomatic issue. It's about accepting reality. Here, the context is specifically about digesting, accepting, assimilating, letting go. Because we can perceive reality through our eyes, through our ears, through our gastrointestinal tract. Right. Ilya, I see you. Ilya, I see you constantly have bloating, pain, especially during stress. Right. And the mem. So during stress, how do you perceive this situation? What do you feel? Look, there will be fear, anger, irritation, and helplessness. Right. So that's it. Tanda writes, my lower back hurts a lot. Yes, my lower back hurts a lot, of course, very often because of the intestines, and often people write directly. Vadym, when I start doing the practices, my intestines just relax. I feel really light. Internal fatigue and apathy. Yes. So let's break it down, department by department, right? So what's the first thing we have here? Mouth, throat, esophagus. What are the issues here? That I can't accept, can't let something into my life, certain circumstances. And here, I probably want to talk more about the esophagus. A lot of people really suffer from this, right? They have bowel reflux, they get heartburn, they feel this discomfort, poor things. They can't even eat, right? They constantly have these circumstances going on. And notice, people who have problems with their esophagus and stomach, what's their distinguishing feature? These are people who are always complaining. These are people who are in a state of non-acceptance. Everyone is bad in their eyes. They're always arguing about something, right? They have this feeling of resentment, of injustice they just can't stomach. And they don't even talk about their own situation that they can't accept or digest, because they suppress their feelings so much. They're always like, these people are bad, this government is bad, that neighbor is bad, something else is bad. Sound familiar? Is that you, or maybe your friends? Yeah? Yeah. So, why do we need the esophagus? It's about acceptance. And then in the intestines, let's say, it's about digestion. So the esophagus is about I can't accept this person, these circumstances, these events, right? That's why there will be disgust, there will be squeamishness, and such people will hold a lot of resentment. So what's the strategy there? I suppress it. I don't say anything. I don't express myself. But the body keeps reacting. A person comes in, gets diagnosed, gets prescribed pills. But well, they just keep not digesting, keep not accepting. And here's the paradox. These people can talk a lot. They can verbalize things in general. But they don't talk about their own pain. So they complain about something or other. But when it really matters, when they need to speak up, defend their boundaries, actually say what's important, they stay silent. Do you get what I mean? Or is it too complicated? How do you learn to accept a situation? That's a real classic. I'll talk a bit later about how we're going to do this. Yeah. Frequent diarrhea, yes, frequent diarrhea. What could it be? Diarrhea is a condition. Look, for example, you might eat some food that's not fresh. And yes, you might get diarrhea right away, for example, right? That's just a physiological process. Now imagine there's some situation you find yourself in. Circumstances, a situation, a person, something like that. And you feel intense fear there. And you want to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. And that's why you immediately run to the bathroom. So it's like, I want to get rid of it, right? There will definitely be anxiety there. There will be fear. And there will be this urge to get away from it as quickly as possible. So, before diarrhea, what kinds of situations do you find yourself in? Yeah, let me tell you about cavities. Thank you, Natalia, for reminding me. Well, teeth are also part of the digestive system, right? But here the issue isn't about digestion as such. It's about taking what I need, defending my boundaries, biting. So first, do I feel the inner strength to take what I need, to grab, to bite, to claim it? That's the first thing. Second, do I allow myself to show aggression, in the positive sense of the word? To argue, to say no, right? So for those who have serious dental problems, it's really an issue with anger, with aggression. They bring in a child, and it's just terrible for their age. Again, you see, when we talk about cavities, some people have fewer, some have more. And it's always like, well, lucky or unlucky, right? That's what they're talking about here. Like, you weren't lucky, but I was. You'll be coming to see me, right? But no one is going to look into the family history to see what's really going on there. So they bring in a child like that, and the mother is just completely shut down. I ask her, do you forbid yourself from getting angry? She says, yes, that's basically my whole life. She just endures it, right? Why? Of course, it's a result of upbringing. It's the consequence of childhood trauma. You can't be yourself, because if you say something, people will turn away from you. They won't give you love. So in this case, you need to explore this particular scenario, this pattern. Why is it not okay to say no? Nah. No. Oh. Is it possible to purchase just the module on the gut separately? Alina, you can't buy just the gut module separately, because I don't sell it that way in modules. Why not? I'll explain now. There's a very simple logic to it. Look, in order to learn how to work with the gut, you first need to understand emotions and feelings. That's my fundamentals module. For 2 weeks, we study emotions, feelings, the basics of psychosomatics, and their bodily manifestation. So it's a 6-week foundation, without which it's impossible, like the alphabet. Then, in the systems module, we have a section on the gastrointestinal tract, because giving it all at once, there's overwhelming information, impossible to fit into one module. But you could say that when you get the fundamentals plus the GI system, for you, it will be like one module. You can write in, and my support team will get in touch and explain everything. Alright, now let's talk about the esophagus. Is that clear? There are some small differences here. Now, let's talk about polyps in the intestines. Again, where exactly are the polyps? That's very important. Look, if we're talking about the esophagus, that's about not accepting something. The stomach. That's about not digesting something. In other words, there's some situation that's hard to digest. So here, something is forcing me to do what I don't want to do, and I don't see a way out.
In the stomach. I can't digest it.
That's exactly why so many people suffer from gastritis. Unfortunately, even doctors themselves suffer, because there are certain circumstances, and a person feels inside that they can't change anything, and there will be fear, because basic needs are affected. There will be disgust, rejection, unwillingness. I don't want to digest it. I don't want to agree with it. Yes, it's not mine, but I can't do anything about it. And that's when the spasm happens. And what else does a stomach spasm affect? It affects the spasm of the diaphragm. And then the functioning of the spine, breathing, and posture as a whole is disrupted. Often, when we talk about posture, we only think about the muscles, but let's not forget that we also have internal organs inside us. When, for example, there's a spasm in the intestines, the whole body will twist around the intestines and go into spasm. And again, only bodywork specialists know this. You need to relax the intestines, and then the muscles and ligaments around the intestines will also relax, and the person will start to breathe and finally exhale. Right. The diaphragm is very important. Thanks to the diaphragm, the internal organs get a kind of massage. Thanks to the diaphragm, the whole body gets oxygenated. If it works properly, the whole body functions well. But if every second we're not breathing fully because of spasms, for example, in the intestines or the stomach, then of course the whole system will be disrupted. That's why the key conflict will be something indigestible, a situation I can't process or digest. There will be fear there, and hints of anger. There will be anger. So in our gastrointestinal tract, there will always be an undercurrent of anger. Why anger? Because of helplessness, because I can't. You might wonder, what does it mean? I can't digest it. There are just certain circumstances. And look, this is a very important detail that we need to distinguish. There are circumstances in life, and then there's my perception of those circumstances. And this can be completely different for everyone. Because no one ever taught us to perceive the picture of the world through emotions and feelings. We got used to just slapping a label on things. Like, well, those are the circumstances. For example, a woman, let's say, a specific case, who has both gastritis and problems with her gallbladder and liver. She has her own, as they say, ladies' set of issues. And when she comes and works with us in the program, what does she discover? She can't digest the atmosphere in her family. Her husband doesn't talk, the kids are there. It's just, let's say, a sluggish atmosphere. And that's exactly how she writes it. I can't influence this. Well, I can't just run away from my own family and loved ones, can I? How do you imagine that would work? No. But I also don't want to accept or agree with this. And it's only when she tunes into her feelings and breaks it down that she realizes, first of all, she connects it to her childhood, because back then, no one really talked to her either. So, the situation in her family now is actually neutral, but she reacts to it this way because that's how she was treated as a child. That's the first thing. Second, she goes deeper. What is important to her? And for her, it's important that her husband actually does certain things, takes specific actions. When she realizes this, it gets even easier for her. When she understands that just because each family member is busy with their own thing, it doesn't mean they're hurting her, they're just occupied. It becomes even easier. So, layer by layer, she starts peeling back these layers, voicing her feelings. First and foremost, she understands them. Second, she talks about them, negotiates, connects them to the past. She lets go, and her gastritis goes away. And that reaction doesn't happen anymore. Is that clear? Yes, but why are there still so many problems with the gastrointestinal tract? Which again, if you told this girl, for example, that she has family issues, she would say no. What problems? Everything's fine with me. Just like everyone else. Like everyone else. Yeah. Only by going deeper can you understand the reaction. Here's another example. A young girl goes to work. She constantly has stomach pain. She's diagnosed with gastritis, inflammation of the stomach lining. Yeah, they're always looking for something there. From time to time she takes pills. It helps. Then it all starts again. And when you start to look into her story, what's going on? It's actually a pretty ordinary situation. Yeah, it's not like there's some deep resentment towards someone or anything like that. She works in an office. So they go with the office to a certain place, a certain cafeteria. And she doesn't like this cafeteria. I don't know, maybe it's a cafe, a cafeteria, whatever, that's how she wrote it. And she doesn't like the smell. And the smell triggers her, like, I don't want to eat this, I don't like it, but it's like I'm agreeing to it anyway. I just put up with it. Every time this is a trigger for her, it activates her state. When she unpacks this trigger, it's connected to her childhood, because as a child she was, how to put it, sent to a sanatorium. She was about 12 or 13 years old there. And the food there was tasteless, like boiled or stewed stuff. She was just a young girl, and they wanted to improve her health there. But in the end, after that sanatorium, she left even sicker than before. So it's like a trigger. Once again, they're making me do something I don't want to do. But when she started tracking her feelings, she was like, what do you mean? What does that even mean? Well, I don't want to. I'll just have lunch by myself now. And she simply started having lunch alone. She just stopped going where she didn't want to go. Her stomach pains went away. Just the choice. Why couldn't she do that before? She could, but she didn't know. She didn't make the connection. When she went to the gastroenterologist, what did he tell her? Did he say, my dear, is there something you can't digest there? Maybe you shouldn't go to that cafeteria anymore? And now I have a question for you. What is it in your life right now that you can't digest? What is it that you don't accept? What are you refusing to agree to? What do you not want? What is this about in your life? Write it down now. Let's get involved together. So, where is it that, as it seems to me, I can't change things, or I think it's not important? But honestly, if you take a look, if you were given a magic wand, what would you change in your life right now? Where do you agree? Where do you endure? Where do you not accept? Where can't you digest things? Yes. Well, the throat can also be connected to the respiratory system, not just the digestive tract. Here, Ilya writes, a manipulative grandmother who made me do things I didn't want to and constantly threw tantrums. Yes, yes. And now, someone is acting as a trigger for this grandmother. I agree to relationships that don't suit me. Why? You really need to honestly ask yourself, why do I agree to them, right? What am I afraid of? What fear is actually inside? I can't stomach. Oh, I can't digest my boss. So, your boss is an image of whom? If you take the boss away, who is really behind them? So, that's a trigger. Who is this person? So write it down in a who is it really? My husband often stays silent when problems need to be solved, and it drives me crazy. Not just crazy. Every time my husband is silent, what do I feel? I'm scared because. I'm angry because. I feel hurt because. And this whole situation reminds me of something from my life. About what? When did this happen before? Who didn't solve the problems in your life? I can't handle my own helplessness. In other words, I don't accept where I'm weak. But who really doesn't accept my weakness? That's absurd. Nonsense. I can't not accept my own helplessness. What do you mean? I love myself and accept myself as I am, always. Someone in my life didn't accept me. When I'm weak, what am I like? Who doesn't love me? Who doesn't need me? Write it down, yes. Of course, it's the fear of loneliness and rejection. And admit it, Svetlana, that I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of being rejected. And what is this about in my life? Where did this happen? And you don't have to agree to do things you don't want to do. You need to talk about it. And sometimes you just admit it to yourself. You say it out loud, and the relationship already starts to move to a new level. Because you're doing it not out of fear, but out of desire, some goal, yes, a wish for change. It's really hard to let go of anger and resentment toward my parents for not giving enough love, not paying attention, for not seeing my sensitivity. Yes. You don't need to. Well, let go. You need to go into the context and actually experience the feelings that are there. Why can't we let go? It's not because we're stupid or don't understand that it's bad or anything like that. Yeah. Here's an example. If you knew that someone was putting a burning hot stone in your hand, you'd throw it away immediately. Why don't you do the same with resentment? We all understand that holding a grudge is bad. Yes, not accepting things is bad. But we can't do it because we don't understand the depth of what we're actually feeling, which needs are being hurt, and we don't process them. All of this can only be worked through with practice. So, friends, everything you've written to me now, some of you have been brave enough to share, and for some, this broadcast will reach you later. Once again, the digestive system is very important. Accept, digest, absorb, let go, get rid of. Every part is important. Each has, let's say, its own nuances and details. But again, this is about what you agree to in life. And you don't have to agree where you need to act, but you don't, because you don't understand yourself. That's why it's very important. Once again, what date is it, so I don't get confused? On the 17th, we will have a webinar called What Triggers Your Illness? I've put together a guide for you, a list about triggers. What is a trigger? How does it activate a disease? Today I gave you a couple of examples so that this chain can start forming in your mind. But for now, it's not there yet. There's no understanding of how to process emotions, no understanding of what a trigger is. None of these things are clear yet. At the webinar, this will be the next step, where I'll explain these points to you in more depth and give this guide to everyone who attends the webinar. The webinar is completely free, so set yourself a reminder right now. On the 17th, I have a day just for myself. It's a day to sort out my own feelings, to understand my psychosomatics, to help myself, to help my loved ones and those close to me, because when you feel good, the people around you feel good too. This is very important. At this event, I'll be sharing what it's all about. I'll be presenting to you a very important open week. If you've ever attended one of my open weeks, wave your hand here. An open week. From time to time, I organize these kinds of formats. An open week is like a week before the main program, where you can join for a really low price, and during this week, you get the maximum amount of perks. First, lectures, trance practices for self-work, support from a curator, and a chat for communication. In other words, it's the maximum activity so that you can change within a week. I mean, you could spend a week doing nothing, just scrolling through your feed or watching random YouTube videos, or you could actually change in a week. When someone is working with you, when you have a person assigned to you, like Galechka, right? Or, for example, Olechka, the curator, and they help you sort out your situation. So, our open weeks are always popular. People always leave satisfied and get a ton of results, even in just 1 week. And now I'm creating a new week, one that has never existed before. This will be a test drive before the basics module. I have a big program, that lasts 6 weeks, where you learn how to deal with your emotions. So it's not just about finding out, but actually gaining the skill to work through your emotions, learning how to break out of isolation, and learning how to pull out all that unpleasant stuff, all that crap from inside you, so it doesn't end up making you sick. There we talk about psychosomatics, about biological programs, how to work with the unconscious. It's a big 6-week program. But before that, I created a test drive. When you come in, you already start figuring out what stress is, how to deal with it, and why psychosomatics works. How do you understand what you're living through right now, and how do you get out of that state? So, there you'll get 3 awesome practices on how to work with your stress state, how to actually switch yourself into a resourceful state, to be energetic and healthy right here and now. If you want to get these practices, type me. Yeah, so I'm writing this week just for you all. So, for those who attend the webinar on the 17th, what triggers your illness? You'll get the best prices for this week, which kicks off before the main program. Well, it won't just be this week. There will be other programs too. And I always offer the best prices at webinars, prices you won't find anywhere else, not on websites, not in any other ads. Because at the webinar, for those who join live, we'll be working through things together. We'll spend 2 or 3 hours analyzing, working, practicing, so you'll leave as a completely different person. People even write to me after the webinars, saying things like, Vadym, I had headaches for 10 years and didn't know what to do. We figured it out during the webinar, and now my head doesn't hurt anymore. I'm shocked. How does this even work? That's why it's such deep work. So your next step is to register for the webinar on the 17th. Show up. That's a must. I've already told you at the beginning what other live sessions we'll have this month. After the webinar, you'll move on to the test drive. From the test drive, you can then move on either to the basics module or to the year-long program. Is that clear? Who wants to solve their problems? And I just want to add a little something. You know, the following. I have some statistics. My school is 7 years old. I constantly hold live sessions, webinars, and events. I have a lot of cases, healing stories. I even have a separate page dedicated to that. And we always track the statistics. Many people write to me, Vadym, I want to be healthy. I'm tormented by allergies, my gut hurts, I don't know. Problems with my uterus. Issues. This is solved psychosomatically. And when I organize an event, for example, something similar on the 17th, and we see the statistics, and this event, it's free, you just need to show up. And the statistics show that many people who register don't actually come. So it would seem, just come. The person is doing something. They'll give you value. You just need to come, listen, and your life will already start to change. Yeah, if you want, you can join the program later. If you don't want to, you don't have to. No one is forcing you to do anything, but you'll already get tons of information. If you've been to my webinars and received information, let me know. Vadym always shares, always explains things, right? Plus, there are examples and simple practices so you can really understand it. So ask yourself this very important question, okay? When you register, come join us. What's holding you back? Is it that you don't believe, or are you afraid? What are the reasons? There are always people who take a step and their life changes. And there are people who don't. But not taking a step is also a choice, to stay where you are. That's why, please, my mission and my team's mission is to make sure there are more healthy and happy people. So that absolutely everyone, regardless of their education or skills, can get rid of illness, prevent disease, and help their loved ones, family, and children. This is very important. It's actually easier than it seems. You just need to follow the system, step by step. So please, guys, friends, don't put your life off until tomorrow. Don't do things that freeze you in place or hold you back. Do the things that will get you results and bring you closer to your goal. Deal? So, for example, there's an open week or a test drive. The cost is 2,000 rubles. For 2,000 rubles, you'll get insanely cool lectures, and you'll get 3 practices, really awesome ones, that work with your subconscious. How can you get out of a stressful state right here and now? First, you'll work on your anxiety, then you'll work through where you've lost yourself in life, and finally, you'll address what you've forbidden yourself to do in life so that your energy and resources can start flowing. I'll give you these 3 powerful practices. Even if you just do these practices, your life, it will already start to change. It's like adding more color to your world. You'll see things differently, you'll have more energy, you'll sleep better, and your self-esteem will grow. That's it. Is that clear? Any questions about the event, friends? Any questions at all? Go ahead. We still have 10 minutes together. I'm here for you, I'm yours. Yes, sometimes being sick is actually beneficial. Anya writes. From a rational point of view, being sick doesn't make sense. It's just that sometimes a person doesn't realize that health is much closer than they think, especially when, from childhood, they're told they're sick, that something's wrong with them, that nothing will ever change. They just stop believing. Even when Vadym is here dancing around with his tambourines, sharing examples and real-life cases, everyone goes, yeah, that's great. But deep down you still think, well, that's not about me. I can't feel that. It won't work for me. Oh, my pain is serious. You can't cure it like that, yeah? Or, oh, I'm fine. Just falling apart a little. But I'm fine. And you keep thinking that this isn't about you. Guys, this is about you. If you're here, if you're listening to me, it's not just because Vadym is a good guy. Though Vadym is a good guy. It's because this resonates with you. Because you have that feeling inside that you need this, right? Yes. What does constipation mean? Constipation, yes. That's specifically a conflict with the sphincter. It's when I can't let go of some situation. That's where control comes in. This is a very important point. There will be control there. And here's a real-life example, yes. For example, if we're talking about kids, it's the mom who's in this state. Like the mom, right? And her child is under control. You can try giving a little massage. And the mom is taking our course. I think and she's afraid of doing something wrong. She has this fear that her child might get sick, that her husband might leave. These are some of her worries and anxieties. She feels like she has to control everything to stay in that state. And when she, by the way, does the practice that I'll be giving you this week, she comes out of that anxious state and relaxes. Yes, that doesn't mean that all her problems in life are solved after just one practice. We're reasonable people here. Of course not. But she relaxes, she feels at ease for a while, she sleeps better, lets go of things, and her child starts going to the bathroom normally. Here's another example. An adult woman, right, who suffers from constipation. She can't go, and she feels self-conscious about it, because it affects her relationships and, in general, she just feels unwell. And again, as she examines her own story, she finds that it's about control. She can't let go of a situation that happened in her life. She feels like if she relaxes now, if she lets everything go, that's it, it's the end of the world. But as we already understand, nothing at all will actually happen. Let's be honest, if you stop controlling something in your life, absolutely nothing will change. We understand this, because most of our need for control comes from our neuroses, from our fears that something might happen. Do you agree with me? That's why, when you join me in practice and can actually feel what it's like to let something go and stay in that state, it gives our brain, our neural network, a new connection, a sense of how things can be different. That's why I say that psychosomatics isn't just about understanding. It's about developing a skill. It's about forming a new way of thinking. In other words, doing it once isn't enough, but when you do it for a month, or at least for a week, your life already starts to change. Here, Elena is writing about a classic example. Right, you need to submit an application for admission. Her son doesn't want to look for universities or check the scores, and she can't stay calm about it. It's shaking both me and him up. Yes, but it's shaking you up first and foremost. That's why you need to ask yourself, first, what am I really afraid of? Before you start fussing, you need to, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid your child will end up on the street or that something will happen? Or are you worried people will think you're a bad mother? You need to face that fear and work with it. Oh, you gave the right answer. Well, will you share it with us? I don't have a gong, I would say. Usually during our broadcasts, I hit the gong when there are insights. And usually I end up hitting it the whole show because there are so many insights. So let's talk about hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids. There are a few conflicts here, a few different states. First, since this is already the last part of the intestine, it means I can't let go of something. Maybe it's a dirty, nasty, indecent, or disgusting situation in my life. This could be, most likely, it's something old, ancient. There's a lot of fear, a lot of pain, A lot of this nasty stuff, the kind of thing you don't even want to talk about. As a rule, people don't even want to think in that direction. But you really should, right? That's the first thing. The second is identity. You see, around the age of 3, our identity starts to form. Well, not exactly at 3, a bit earlier, during the anal phase, when that happens. It's more connected to the anal phase. It's about, who am I? What's happening here? It's when a person has lost themselves in life. Last time I mentioned, after giving birth, hemorrhoids started. You'd think, well, she just gave birth. But it's not like everyone gets hemorrhoids after giving birth. But I lost myself. Who am I? Yesterday, I was all sexy schmexy, a real firecracker. And today, here I am, a bag with kids. What am I supposed to do? I don't understand. I don't want this. Where am I even? I can't find myself. Where are my desires? Where do I run? Right. Losing yourself. Who am I? Where am I? What am I? Who am I for? Who am I living for? So, it's the loss of your own identity, right? After some event, after some circumstance. It could be a divorce. It could be moving somewhere. It could be when you end up in a state of I must, I have to, and you lose yourself. And that's why, from a psychosomatic perspective, you get ulceration of the rectum, and then the blood vessels get involved too, right? When we're talking about hemorrhoids. That's it. These are the 2 key points. And these are 2 CONF. And the third, of course, is shame and some kind of dirty, indecent situation. And if you've had constipation since adolescence, you mean you, Svetlana. If a person has chronic constipation, then yes, these are the states you keep stewing in from time to time. So the filter, it relaxes, right? It tenses up in us, right? So I'm constantly in this kind of state. It can be a metaphor, right? What is it that you can't relax about? Svetlana, what terrible thing will happen if you relax? Who's going to be in trouble? That's one way to ask it. If we're talking about oncology, it's the same conflict, but it's much more intense and much longer lasting. So on the scale, it's not just like this, but like this, huge. There will be betrayal. There will be something like infidelity. Something so terrible that I just can't let it go. It's impossible. Usually, a person says, I'd rather die than let it go. It's impossible. What was done to me is just unacceptable. It's impossible, right? That's why, when we talk about oncology, of course, there's going to be a very intense conflict. And besides the main conflict, the person has completely lost touch with their feelings, lost touch with their own life. In other words, they've been walking down the wrong path for a long time. So it's not a coincidence. That's why, when we're afraid of getting sick, it actually gives us this worldview that, out of nowhere, someone just got sick and burned out. No, believe me, a person can't just get cancer for no reason. It's very complicated. You have to really lose yourself. Just imagine how much biology steps in to help when we can't handle things psychologically. So don't look at it that way. Don't just try to calm yourself down. Look towards prevention instead. So if you have something urgent right now, something that's telling you it needs to be dealt with immediately, right? On the 17th, there's a broadcast, a week-long foundation, maybe even a year-long program. Then the girls there will diagnose you and explain everything to you. If it's something slow-burning, like sometimes it hurts, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you eat, sometimes you don't. Guys, you need to deal with it. It won't go away on its own. So how do we usually handle this? Something starts to hurt. Oh, we take some pills and think, well, it'll pass. But it won't just go away by itself. So what's the cause? You still need to figure it out. What were the feelings, the emotions, what suppressed conflict was there, right? That's why you need to get to the bottom of it. And if everything is fine, that's wonderful, that things are good right now. May it always be that way for you. May you always be healthy. But you have to reach that state. Right. What do you need to do? Prevention. Understand how the psyche works. Understand how my body works. So I don't fall into stress. So I can prevent that state. In general, you need to practice prevention. I love it when healthy people come to my programs, not when it's already an emergency. When you're working and working from morning till night, treating all those conflicts, right? When a person is healthy, they absorb information better, they immediately start applying these strategies, and their life changes. Their relationships improve, right? Their work, their finances, everything gets better, because they start to connect with themselves. That's really important. You need to practice prevention. Don't think that psychosomatics is only for when you're already falling apart, when the doctors are basically kicking you out of the clinic, right? They just say goodbye. No. You need to start taking care of it in advance. Elenachka, my dear, what do you do when you just can't let go? Exactly. And how could you possibly manage that, my dear, if no one ever taught you how? Excuse me, but it's like if you told me right now, Vadym, come on, do some macrame with your neck. I'd say, but I don't know how. You'd say, huh? Huh. You don't know how? What a lazybones. He can't do macrame. Nobody ever taught him. How are you supposed to do it? That's why on the 17th, make sure to register for the trigger event. Alright, what triggers your illness? Because I'll be talking in detail there about psychosomatics. And make sure to join the live stream I announced as well. Today, the key idea I wanted to get across to you guys. First, our gut isn't some separate thing that we just feed with salads, probiotics, or, I don't know, some pills. Our gut is us. It's me, it's feelings, it's my desires, it's my wants, it's my disappointments, it's my pain, it's my suffering, it's my life, it's everything that happens. And I can't treat my gut, or really my whole body, separately from my own story, separately from my life, from my feelings. That's impossible. It would just be a vicious cycle. That's why I need to come back to myself. Right. I need to learn how to figure things out. Today I've highlighted for you where you can't, and why you can't. There you go. Yulia writes, is varicose veins hereditary? Well, look, it's not about something. From a psychosomatic perspective, what gets passed down is a certain strategy. What is varicose veins? I can't get rid of some kind of dirt, because what are veins, right? This is the removal of waste products. That is, there's again the same powerlessness. I can't get rid of something. That's why I inherited this strategy from my relatives. They couldn't, and now I can't. But I'm smarter. I'm listening to Vadym. I'll figure it out little by little. I'll go through the program, and I'll let go, right? I will learn to work with my feelings. So once again, it's not about understanding just one thing, like how to let go, but about understanding what you're living in, what feelings you're experiencing. That's very important. Thank you for the humor. There you go. Svetlana writes, the fear is if I relax, I won't survive. There was no help from my parents after I finished school. Yes, there was no help back then. Maybe you didn't survive then, but you did survive. And that time is already gone. But your body keeps reacting. That's very important. From a psychosomatic perspective, this is an unprocessed feeling. So, right here and now, look at reality. It's different, and you are completely different now. Right. We'll definitely do some practices together during the webinar. Heh. Awesome. Thank you, friends, for today's broadcast. Write down what was useful for you today, what exactly triggered you today. That's very important. Even just by writing this down, even when you direct your focus, it already completely changes your life. Be sure to share this broadcast. You have a button there, with your family and loved ones. And if a person starts to look at themselves from the outside, their life already begins to change. If you have any questions that I haven't answered, be sure to write to me in direct messages. My team and I will definitely respond and explain everything to you. On the 17th, there's a huge event that I'm preparing for you. There will be handouts that I want to give each of you, so you can print them out and hang them up, so you know what triggers your condition and the specific steps you need to take. You absolutely have to be there on the 17th. You need to register today already. Yesterday, I opened registration. Guys, I don't understand those of you who aren't registering. How are you planning to solve your problems? How? Stop believing in fairy tales. None of us are 13 anymore. You have to take action. When you do, you get results. When you do nothing, there are no results. So, what's up? As they say, it's time to come back to reality. And on the 21st, we're starting the test drive we called Why? Before the Basics module. That's it. Wishing everyone peace, love, and a wonderful mood. Thank you all.